just finished 18 and out of this great golf course that's probably not many people know a lot about. It's called La Tour. It's in Matthews, Louisiana, home of Tommy Hudson. And it's a great place. Listen, I got off to the front nine pretty good. I played through, I was around par, a little bit over. Back nine, the wheels came off. I was much over par, and I got in the car and hit it home.
Usually the back nine falls apart for me as well, but that's because I've had too many beers by the time I get to the turn, and it's just that feeling where you have a couple and it takes the edge off, makes you a little looser, but then there's the line when you cross it. Now you're sloppy. Like that's pretty much how my rounds go.
Well, it makes you a little looser. You get a little bit more flexibility, and then you start fading the ball, and you start slicing the ball, and the game's over.
Amen to that. When you heard the news that Daronte Jones is going to be LSU's defensive coordinator, what were your thoughts?
I just sent a little text to him thinking and just telling him we're hoping the best for him. And, being a former LSU Tiger as well as, my family, my father was a former LSU Tiger. We're just dang excited to have somebody in there that we know and trust, like a lot. So just, excited for him.
It's amazing. It's been, 02 was, almost 20 years ago when he was on your staff at Nicholls. Did you know then that he had this type of potential in the coaching profession?
You never do. But, he was a guy that was always very good in communication, with the players, with the coaches. And then, when he came in, too, one thing that when I hired him, it really impressed me was his ability to listen. He wasn't a young coach that came in there and tried to say, we ought to do this, we ought to do that, we ought to do this. He actually listened and got close with our defensive coordinator, Jay Thomas, who was a great mentor and teacher. And, the guys that were on the staff, Charlie Kidd, I could go on. But he was a guy that learned to listen. And that is a great trait with young coaches nowadays, is learn to listen. But, as he went on through the years and watching him go from place to place, the sky was the limit, because he spoke well. He was a really good teacher and cared about the kids.
That's obviously something that Ed Ogeron mentioned in an interview earlier today that stood out about Daronte Jones going through the interview process. But it sounds like you've kept in touch as you sent him a text, as you mentioned today. What have been your impressions as you've kind of followed his career through the major college ranks into the NFL? Where obviously you spent some time in the NFL as well. As you watched him progress over the last 20 years.
You just, you see him get better each year. You see him, get to another place. And it really doesn't surprise you once you get to know Daronte and get to learn, about him and what he's all about. It doesn't surprise you, But, if you present yourself well, speak well, and you got a successful track record, the sky's the limit.
Daryl Daye's with us, former Nicholls head coach, former LSU linebacker in the early 80s, spent 35 years in the coaching profession, all the way back as a GA in 1986, which means if you were there from 86 to 88, you would have been a GA during the earthquake game, yes?
Yeah, we were there.
And you would
full form.
Would you remember a young Gordy Rush playing either safety or wide receiver?
I do. I think they found a helmet that night that he could fit into, and he got to play. But I got to crack on my man Gordy. He's a great guy. I think the world of him. But yes, I know Gordy very well.
Gordy,
good football player.
He unfortunately is our boss, and I don't ever like to remind him that he's a good football player. I just like to remind him that he was like a pretty good special teams, like off the bench type guy. Right. So. Is one of the questions about Daronte Jones that we've had, because we're all learning, right? Not many people here were aware of Daronte until he kind of popped up on the radar about 5 days ago. How easy or difficult do you think it is for a guy who last coordinated a defense in 2009 at the Division II level, now 12 years later, to step into the SEC and try to do that?
Well, great players make great coaches. There's no doubt about that. So, it's going to be largely hinging on, what he has and what he's, available to do with. But, this guy's been under, coaches all the way back to a guy like Jay Thomas at Nicholls. He has mentored so many young guys, and, he's getting Daronte's learning this old school football, and that's what he really came from. It's the old school football. Because let's be honest, it's not old school anymore. It's changed a lot. And just the fact that he's been able to, be successful and go through the process of the game changing, he had to change a lot with it. And then the guy's been at every level, from high school to Canadian football to NFL. I mean, the guy's been at every level. And like I said, at the first, he was a guy that knew how to listen, knew how to, and he learned. He just ate it up. And those are kind of guys that you want as your coordinator. And he's a sharp guy, and he's a character guy, and he's a great communicator.
You mentioned a couple of times that he came from sort of the old school. Ed Ogeron mentioned that as well. That they kind of come from the same mold defensively and same attitude and mindset. Can that work in today's modern game of football where defenses are stretched and challenged like they've never been before?
Yeah, if you got three that can rush and get there, rush three. If you can't, add another man to the rush. There's an answer nowadays, but they're throwing the ball all over the yard, and it's a fan game. They want to impress the fans, and that's where the game has gone to. And you don't see a lot of the two-back, run the ball, play action, Brett Favre offense anymore. It's all changing.
Do you remember anything about Daronte Jones as a recruiter?
Absolutely. And we didn't have him for very long, but he can go into any home, any white or black, doesn't matter. He's a guy that can be, he'll cover his area. I think he signed 4 or 5 of our guys when we were there. But he's excellent communicator, so that's and I know he'll be able to sell himself. And he's a Louisiana product in sense. I mean, he's been down here a lot, so he knows the people. He knows the division of North Louisiana, South Louisiana, and he's been successful doing it.
Just a couple more for you. Daryl Daye is our guest, former LSU Tiger, former Nicholls head coach who had Daronte Jones on his staff back in 2002 at Nicholls. Do the divvying up of duties, Ed Ogeron has said that Daronte Jones will coach safeties and Corey Raymond will coach corners, and there was sort of this conversation a lot the past couple of years where Bill Bush was coaching safeties and Corey was coaching the corners, and then maybe they didn't like divvying up those responsibilities. How difficult is that, or how much of a challenge is that to divvy up responsibilities in the secondary with coaches by position?
I think it's good if they're able to separate them, and like they have with Corey. He's a proven coach there, and so don't mess up the card. He's working. Our corners have been very productive, over the years, and I know Corey very well, and he's been very productive as a coach. So, and that's probably it helps. Instead of giving them all the secondary with the coordinator, now he does. He's freed up to pay more of attention to what he's got to do with the safeties and being a coordinator. But I think it's a good thing that they separated it up like that.
You plan to make it to Baton Rouge for any games?
Every chance I get. I don't know. We'll see. I took my sabbatical this year. I think I picked the right year. But we always gotta make a game. But I know you're wanting to ask. Can you give me one good story on Daronte? And
please,
I'll throw you one out if we got time.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was going out of town one weekend and he asked me to watch his pet. I assumed it's a dog, and I said, sure, take off. I got it. I walk into his office, and there's a 8-foot boa, white and yellow.
Oh my God!
Snake. And I ain't scared of snakes, but I'm a little, I ain't put my hands on this big snake, and so I closed the door, and I thought I did, and I went, back to the office. When I was coming out, our custodian, Owen Babin, the great Owen Babin, came down the hall with a shovel and fixing to cut the head off of Daronte's boa. And obviously everybody was screaming up down the hall. I scooped the snake back up, put it back in the back, and I leave him in the office. But Daronte, whether they call him the snake doctor or whatever, I know it's going to lead to a nickname. But there's your one for Daronte.
Wait. Was the snake in a cage or just loose in his office?
It was in the cage, and when he closed it, it got out. and it was slithering down the hall, and the custodian sees it.
No.
He don't know. He thinks there's some snake out to bayou. So, this guy comes out, and he's old Cajun, and he got him a shovel. He's going to kill him a snake. And,
oh, my God. I am not a snake. How did you let this man have a snake in your football office?
Well, he brought it in and had a little blanket over the thing. And nobody knew about it. He was just moving in there, and he didn't have a place to put it. So,
oh my God!
Chopped up.
Did you know that he's like a super duper whiskey collector?
I heard that somewhere. He likes a little bourbon every now and then, but keeps it in control.
No, I just I'm a collector, and I saw his Instagram page, and he's got like unicorns. I mean, he's like as serious as I am in the thing. Like I was actually gonna invite him. Hey man, let's have a bourbon. But honestly, if he's got snakes around, I'm not interested in that at all, Coach. I don't want no part of a snake anywhere near me, man. I don't do snakes.
He might. I don't know. I hadn't asked him in a while to be. We always tell the story. I talked to him and hadn't talked to him for a while, and the story always comes up because I had to put the snake back in the cage.
Oh man!
And I'm having to grab this thing. It's hissing at me. I'm thinking I'm fixing to get bit, but it didn't. We got it back in the cage, and the snake lived to tell the tale we now heard.
Well, if I'm lucky enough to have Daronte on the show, first question will be about whiskey. And the second question will be about that snake. And then somewhere down the road, maybe we'll talk about football if I get over the shock of an 8-foot snake slithering down a football ops building. Man, I'll tell you this much. If I was on your staff, I would not have been on staff the next day if I saw an 8-foot snake in the building. Coach, it's a pleasure. Daryl Daye, thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us. Hopefully tomorrow. You get back on the links tomorrow?
We're back again out there. I got to get that back 9 in check.
Get that back 9. Hit them straight tomorrow, and we appreciate some time. We'll visit again down the road.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's Daryl Daye, former LSU Tiger, former Nicholls State head coach who had Daronte Jones on his staff. Dude, I'm glad he threw out that story. I was going to go to break. I wasn't going to ask him for a Daronte Jones story. I thought maybe he'd throw one out when I talked about recruiting, but 8-foot snake? Oh. I ain't about that action, boss. Not me.
I'd let the dude cut the head off that thing.
Get it. Out. No doubt. Lee Feinswag next.
AFR.